All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lauren Wright. I am the head of program here at Metroland Cultures, and we are very, very excited to have you here. There's a possibility there may be people drifting in and out as we go, so we'll just make a start now. We want this to be quite a comfortable and relaxed space. So I can see most of you have your cameras off. That's perfectly fine. You're very welcome to leave them that way or to turn them on as you're most comfortable. So this is the very first thing that we're doing as an independent organization at Metroland Cultures. And it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. So this is the beginning of our program, Making Myself Visible, which is the very first thing that Metroland is doing following the very successful year of London Borough of Cultures. And the purpose of our program is really to sort of kick off, establish ourselves as a new organization working in Brent and throughout London and in connection with partners nationally and internationally. So this is the first conversation on visibility. And the purpose of these discussions is to talk about what does it mean to make things visible that might not be so obvious outside of an immediate community. So what does it mean to make cultures visible, to make practices visible? And during the pandemic over these last couple of years, there's been so much richness going on in local areas. And what does it mean to make those visible to the people immediately surrounding them and further afield? So today's conversation is the first, and there'll be 4. And it's just a huge privilege to be here in this space with you. So that's enough from me for now. I'll hand over to the wonderful Cecilia Wee, who is going to be taking you through the rest of this evening's conversation. Over to you, Cecilia.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this first conversation on visibility, and it is entitled Gathering. So I'm not sure how loud my computer is, but it's whirring, like it's about to take off. So hopefully that's not the case.
You can't hear it, Cecilia, it's fine.
It's really loud. It's really loud. But I guess we're all like navigating all of the different like layers of technology, physicality, and I feel like that seems quite apt for today's topic. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. It's a delight and honor to be facilitating this talk. So one of the phrases that I always really love is think global, act local. And so it's great to say that tonight we're going to be bringing together a group of awesome practitioners from Brent and beyond, who've been creating and holding important spaces that center the needs and dreams and desires of communities. So Ismael Dahir, who's a Blueprint member and participant in the Seen and Heard program, which was part of Brent 2020, as well as Nirmean Sawi from Sufra, Northwest London Foodbank and Kitchen. And we'll also be joined by Mars Marshall, who's the director at Allied Media Conference in Detroit in Michigan. So before we hear from them, I've got a few practical notices to share, including introducing the community guidelines we put together for this event. So we currently have pinned alongside myself and Lauren, Bridget, who is our BSL interpreter. We also have another BSL interpreter, Rebecca, who's participating, and they'll be taking it in turns. So if you are a BSL user, then please direct message Eliel or Lindsay. You'll be able to do that through the chat function and just let them know who you are so that Rebecca and Bridget can make sure that they are pinning you as well. Another thing is that there are live transcriptions on Zoom. So if you just go down to the more bar at the bottom of your Zoom interface with the 3 dots, then you'll be able to see show subtitles, and that should allow you to see the auto transcriptions. And if you need any assistance with that, then please do DM Eliel or Lindsay. And Lindsay's called Metroland Cultures, in case you're looking for her in the chat. So this evening's event is being recorded, and it's also going to be available. So it's going to be available on the Metroland Cultures website and also their YouTube channel. So as Lauren was saying, then feel free to keep your cameras on or off, however you like. You're also welcome to rename yourselves with your pronouns if you'd like to do that. And just so that we know maybe where everyone is, and say in the kind of spirit of gathering, then if you'd like to, please write in the chat and say where you're dialing in from today. So I'm dialing in from Penge in South London. We also appreciate and encourage the use of emojis. If you'd like to show your appreciation to the speakers, then that will be great as well. So, and we also have Mars. Hi, Mars. Great that you could join us. I'm going to carry on with the little introductory bits, and then I will lead us in a sec. Okay, so first, after I introduce the community guidelines, we're going to have short presentations from each of the panelists. So Nirmean is going first, and then Ismael, and then Mars. After that, we'll have a little discussion between the panelists. And then before 8 p.m. UK time, then we'll have a little 10-minute break. And then after that, we'll carry on our discussion, bringing in the audience members. So during the break, we encourage you to put questions for the speakers into the chat. And I'll encourage you to use your digital hand function, or put Q in the chat if you'd like to speak. And I'll remind you of this after the break as well. Okay, great to see some hellos in the chat as well. So our topic today is about gathering. And since the start of the pandemic, we've been more intentionally thinking about the quality of our relationships and how we enact our values in real time and together. So that's why we put together some community guidelines, which you can see here. So I'll just read through them just so that everyone hears and has time to kind of look through them. Number 1, ableism, homophobia, racism, sexism, transphobia, or prejudice based on ability, asylum status, class, ethnicity, gender presentation, nationality, or religion is not welcome here. Number 2, respect everyone's identity and background, including pronouns and names. Do not assume anyone's gender identity, sexual preference, survivor status, economic or immigration status, background, health, etc. Number 3, respect everyone's physical and emotional boundaries. Check in before discussing topics that may be triggering, e.g. sexual abuse, racism, physical violence, or encounters with police. Number 4, respect that there are varying opinions, beliefs, experiences, and privileges, as well as different ways of learning and interacting. Collectively, we recognize the power dynamics that exist here. Be aware of the space that you take up, your assumptions and prejudices, and allow space for all voices to participate. Number 5, be responsible for your own actions and the language that you use. Be aware that your actions and language have an effect on others, despite what your intentions may be. Number 6, take collective and individual responsibility for creating a safer space for everyone. Number 7 is work together to foster a spirit of mutual respect. listen to the wisdom everyone has to share. And so those guidelines are adapted from SOAS Union, as well as the Soul Fire Farm, Safer Spaces policies, and also from the work that I was doing last year on a slow conference called With For About, that I was working on with James Ledbetter, the vacuum cleaner, mental health activist and artist. So if you have any concerns about the way that the discussion is being conducted, please feel free to send a private message to Eliel, who's looking after the community guidelines, or Lindsay, and they're both co-hosts today. Okay, and I see that Eliel is also putting the guidelines into the chat as well, just in case anyone needs to see them there. So I'd like to now introduce our speakers. So we have Nirmean Sawi. Nirmean is Programs and Services Manager at Sufra Northwest London Foodbank and Kitchen. And we also have Ismael Dahir, who's been, hey Ishmael, who's been part of the Blueprint Collective. So that was a network of young people brought together to help shape the Brent 2020 program. And Mars Marshall. Mars is the director of Allied Media Conference, where they, and if you don't know Allied Media Conference, it's an amazing gathering that hopefully will be coming back in real life in Detroit next year. I just got the notice saying that it's going to be the 30th of June to the 3rd of July next year. So hopefully there will be some way of getting there. So Mars focuses on amplifying the work of artists, organizers, educators, and technologists using media for liberation. Mars is also a writer who's been named a 2021 Kresge Literary Arts Fellow, and a 2019 Lambda Literary Arts Emerging Writer in Poetry Fellow, and more. So I was wondering if we might kick off now, after all of those many introductions. I think the first presentation that we're going to have is from Nirmean.
Awesome. Thank you, Cecilia, for the introduction. Also, thank you as well, Lauren, and everyone at Metroland for inviting Sufra to speak today. So Sufra is a food bank, kitchen, and community hub based in St. Raphael's Estate in Northwest London. And we've been running for about 8 years now. I think just one of the key things to mention, and why we're also really happy to be involved in the conversation, is I guess the theme gathering is really core to our ethos, and it's kind of, you might see it in our name. Sufra stands for, well, means the dining table where people go to share a meal. So for us, it's always been really important to be able to have that interaction, face-to-face interaction with the people who are using our services. I think that's been core for us achieving what we have, and being able to achieve these outcomes over the years has only been possible by hearing from people firsthand about their experiences. I think that's the only way to be able to kind of create services or try and work together to create solutions or to ease the burden. Sometimes, solutions, it's not easy to find solutions, but if we can work together to support people to ease the burden, then that's a great outcome. Okay, I think to just circle back. So for us, obviously over the last year and from the pandemic, it's been very difficult not being able to see the people that we've, most commonly been serving. However, we've had to kind of deal with the real increased demand with the need for food aid. So for us, it's been a larger focus has been on trying to get that aid out to people, while also trying to stay in touch with them, find out about what they're going through and what their needs are. So I think we all know the value that technology's had in kind of filling that gap, in just at least kind of keeping us connected. But I think we all know that there's kind of nothing more fruitful than, again, that face-to-face interaction, getting to see people's body language, getting to just dig deeper in the conversations. For us, a lot of, when individuals or families are coming to use the food bank, they're usually it's the tip of the iceberg for them, and there are many layers underneath about what they've experienced and what they're going through. And that's kind of only possible to get to the root causes and find out more by having those face-to-face conversations. Yeah, I think that's probably all from me for now.
Thank you so much, Nirmean. I think those things that you raise, this idea that like food is so important, not just in terms of sustaining us like physically, but also as a way for us to come together. It's
bringing us together. Yeah, definitely.
It's so important. And also, I guess, like, so many of us are missing physical interaction since the pandemic, and also, recognizing that it is in some ways also a luxury, that some people have been able to work from home and other people have not. They've had to work face to face because that's the nature of their work as well. And I was just, I just wanted to give you a bit more space to kind of like explore some of those questions, or like, as I sent the little prompt that may or may not be helpful, what are the things that we might have learned from this period, or even what are the feelings that we've been holding.
I think, just like touching on that point about kind of being able to gather back again with one another really is a privilege. I think for us, one of our core services was a community kitchen service. Every Friday, we'd run a restaurant where anyone from kind of the community could attend. It wasn't by referral or anything. But it was definitely an opportunity where you'd get to see a lot of people who are isolated generally from society. But it was definitely kind of that space where you could be able to get to know all of these different people from different backgrounds. And like you said, having food as that focal point, it's kind of, everyone can kind of share positive things when it comes to food and positive feelings. So essentially, I think for us, it's just been really detrimental to just be able to have that relationship with our guests who are using our service, to be able to make sure that we're just really hearing from them what it is that they're going through and what it is they need. It's very difficult to assume that, so you really do need to kind of have that space with people.
That's great. Thank you, Nirmean. And that listening space is being really important as well. And like how, I guess, like, I imagine this community restaurant as being a really important listening space for people as we're all like chewing over this food and chewing over our emotions and thoughts as well, as we've all been going through this difficult time. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Nirmean. Ismael, How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Over to you.
All right. So yeah, with gathering, I guess I didn't realize how important it was before like the pandemic hit. So essentially, as the Blueprint Collective, I was on a program called the Seen and Heard program, and throughout the program we met up like quite a few times. I'd say like 3 times a week in the summer holidays of 2019. And I guess we kind of took for granted how it was meeting like people our age. Like at the time I was 19, and like I guess meeting new people, gathering, talking to people, I guess for your mental health, like meeting new people, I guess it's something like I guess satisfying. But yeah, as soon as the pandemic hit and everything shut off, we didn't really see much of each other. It was only online, but you can only gather online to a certain extent until when people start to think, okay, I need to go outside, I need to do this and that. And ever since then, I've also been like sort of football coach. So I'm with kids all the time, and they're always saying like they just want to meet up more and they want to go outside more. And I guess especially the kids that I coach, like they're what, 13, 14, and I guess the entire childhood, their upbringing, like they've had essentially 2 years cut off, like 2 years of social time. So I guess that's something again that's really, it's really sad. Like some of them even they're very tentative to come outside, and it's about opening up and letting the kids like express themselves essentially on the, whether it's through football or through other arts and cultures. I guess it's just getting them out and about essentially. In terms of like now with school starting now, so I guess the kids don't really like, they're going outside, but then again they're only gathering inside school. I guess the gathering and the kind of community feels that they want is sort of like is really limited, if you know what I mean. It's just, I guess potentially like with the Seen and Heard program, like we were building a space, I guess Quintain were building a space, and hopefully with that sparked many more spaces for gatherings to take place. And yeah.
Thanks, Ismael. Would it would be great if you could maybe say a little bit more about Seen and Heard and
Okay.
that program, and maybe the process of like what happened actually.
Oh, okay. Well, Seen and Heard was a program brought to about, I think, 19 to 20 members of the Blueprint Collective. And it was a program that is meant to last 2 years. I think it's still going on, so we'll see what's going on with that. But essentially, it was brought about by Quintain, the developers in the Wembley Park area. They allocated us a space at the beginning. We thought it was just like a space where we're just here to fill a quota essentially, but it became more than that. It became a point where policy recommendations were being built off it, where we made a charter for young people space, like being built from that point onwards. Like it was more than just the space. It was about like how the older people see the marginalized group of 16 to 25-year-olds, where we're too old to play in parks, but we're too young to like hang around in other certain places. And yeah, I guess it's a place, well, the whole name Seen and Heard is based on kids and youth being seen but not heard, and we want to be seen and heard essentially. Kind of kind of a play on words, but yeah.
That's great. Can I read some of the principles?
Yeah.
Because I have because I believe that you all put together these amazing principles for the policy.
Yeah.
Which is like colorful and creative, considerately enclosed, programmable, future-proof for everyone, relaxed for us, inviting, decentralized, a balance of defined and undefined uses, informative, positively signed, flexible, green, and part of a wiser investment. Thank you, because I think these are really powerful, and I think they speak to like so many desires and needs that we all have.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's sort of brought the young out of even the older members of the collective, and even the grown-ups there. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Ismael.
Thank you.
Shall I pass over to Mars for a little intro? A little presentation from Mars. Mars. Hi, Mars.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us all the way in Detroit.
In Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sunny 90-degree day here.
So jealous. It's been raining here. It's been raining.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like not too cold. But yeah.
I'm looking forward to cold personally. But yeah, thank you, Cecilia, and thank you, Lauren, for having me. Hello, you all. My name is Mars. I use they and he pronouns, and I'm director of the Allied Media Conference. And I'm down to like share a little bit about the conference and how we emerged. So the Allied Media Conference emerges out of 20 years of relationship building across issues, identities, organizing practices, and creative mediums. And we started in 1999 as the Midwest Zine Fest, and we were sort of gathering in a place called Bowling Green, Ohio. And as the conference continued to grow, and as like more Black and Brown people attended the conference, more artists attending the conference, more Detroiters attending the conference, it became clear that it was time to move the conference to Detroit, right? So since our time in Bowling Green, Ohio, the AMC has been this incubator of imaginative media strategies in an effort to reimagine and rethink about the world that we want to live. So our conference explores emerging futures at the intersection of media and art and technology and visionary organizing. And for 4 days, over 4 days, we come together to explore what it looks like to build the world that we need, right? And we're actively practicing that world together over 4 days. The beautiful thing about the AMC is that it is a collaborative process. It comes together through more than 100 coordinators who are thinking a lot about what are the imaginative strategies that we need to address the root causes of some of the challenges that we face in our world. And I think one of the things that's really beautiful about the conference is that it's a conference that's not centered on just what the problem is, right? We're a conference that's really thinking about the solutions in a more intergenerational way. So together we co-create this space that celebrates participatory media and liberatory media for our communities, and we're centering Black folks, Indigenous folks, disabled folks, queer and trans folks, undocumented folks, and people of color communities that come together over this dynamic weekend. And one thing that feels really central to say is that we are a conference that takes celebration seriously. And when we gather, we know that we are bringing our whole selves, we're inviting our whole selves into the space. And we know that there are moments where we have to dive into what's hard and we have to strategize around challenges that are impacting our lives. But on the other side of that is celebration too. One thing that feels really important to uplift is a quote that I've carried with me throughout the organizing process of the conference. And it's that relationships get formed in the sessions that we have, but they get solidified on the dance floor. So in addition to having 4 days of really brilliant and dynamic content, we also have 4 nights of parties where we get to come together and literally geek out over amazing DJs or really, really beautiful performing artists. And we think that without that celebration, right, we can't begin to imagine a new world. So at the core of the AMC is 2 sort of broad themes: media for liberation, which is any collaborative process that uses art, media, technology to address the root causes of or root problems in our society. And then also visionary organizing, which is a term that was coined by Detroit revolutionary Grace Lee Boggs, and refers to grassroots organizing that harnesses our collective creative capacity to imagine life-affirming alternatives to oppressive systems. So I'll pause there because I can keep going.
Thank you so much, Mars. There's so much in there. I felt so lucky to be able to join AMC last year when it was online and stay up late watching all those live streams, watching everyone have fun on the virtual dance floor. Yeah, and so yeah, really excited to see that it's coming back next year, and hopefully there'll be some way to be there. There'll be some way to be there.
We are praying for it.
Yeah. I wonder if we could get all of the speakers spotlit now so that we can all participate in this next little part. Thank you. Thanks, Lindsay. And that is really to just, yeah, I wonder if we have questions for each other about some of the things we've shared. There's so much. I feel like the experiences that you all have had and the work that you do, you're kind of touching on so many important issues around, like, yeah, the levels of anxiety, the crisis of care, the importance of like community spaces, outdoor spaces, physical neighborhood spaces that have all been brought to the fore and highlighted since the beginning of the pandemic, as well as, like, yeah, obviously so many issues around members of the community who don't have access to public funds and are not documented, and who struggle to access any kind of services. Yeah, there's so many important issues that your work is bringing up, and I just want to say thank you again. Like, yeah. And I was wondering, does anyone have any of you have questions for each other or thoughts in response to like what you've shared before we open it up to the audience afterwards? Nirmean, you have your hand up.
Hey, yeah. I mean, I just listening to both speakers, I just kind of got that feeling of inspiration again, and just kind of felt like sometimes it's very difficult to see what's happening around and to see what others are doing, and how we can work together. Because I'm sure, Ismael, if you're in Wembley, you're like probably 5 minutes away from Sufra. but unfortunately it's the first time really hearing about kind of the work that you do. And I think that's something that we as an organization have really felt like a craving to kind of work with, see what, you know, I think COVID really just showed as well that there is no sometimes right or wrong way to do things. Like sometimes you are just left, like there's no guidelines, you just have to kind of, you know, do the best that you can. And it really kind of raised that feeling of wanting to know what other people are doing, what other organizations are doing, and how we could work together, share resources to just have the best outcome. And I think kind of pre-COVID, sometimes it's very easy to kind of just focus and hone in on what you're doing. And yeah, I mean, I kind of just wonder how, you know, maybe the other speakers have experienced more collaborative working, or how that's gone for them.
In terms of collaborative working, I think, yeah, it's just like, it's just about trying to get outside again and just trying to get together with other groups, because like it's still kind of difficult because people are still like tentative to like leave and everything. But yeah, I think it's still like, you know what I mean? But yeah, I guess it's a point where we need to start, like there has to be a discussion about how can all these, like like you're literally around the corner from me, but I had no idea who or what Sufra was. Like, I think it's just a thing of trying to get everything out there and trying to get like I don't know how to describe it, but you know, in back in the day when you walk past the corner shop, there was like a notice board, and like you sort of like knew where everything was and what was going on. Like we sort of need like a virtual version of that in order for the community and everyone to know what is going on, and you know what I mean? Just
Yeah, I think I love this question about like what collaborative works look like, because the AMC has been working with people from around the world and across America. So a lot of our collaboration has always sort of been online in some way, from youth coming to the AMC and having like video ciphers with youth in South Africa, right? And really opening up new possibilities. And I think the thing is, or the gift of the pandemic has been leaning into the imagination and radical imagination around what collaborative work looks like, and just literally re-engaging that sense in terms of making a new possibility, making something that's possible. And I think that for us, we're always asking like, what is the gift of this moment, right? What's possible in this moment, right? And how do we engage our imagination and our senses in a more embodied way so that we do feel more connected with each other? And from that has birthed some really beautiful experiences, from, you know, learning of new projects that are coming together as a result of mutual aid needs, right? And finding different ways to like be tapped in from like an organizational perspective. And I think organizations like Metroland and what you all are doing to help bring people together to have this conversation is what makes that discovery for collaboration possible, but also allows us to think more about how we build more critical connections on a local scale.
Definitely, thank you. Something that I was thinking about a lot, and I suppose we're all a lot more aware of, particularly since the pandemic, is about this sense of time. And when I think about collaborations, then I actually think about, it makes me think about time. It makes me think about the time that it takes to make those collaborations. And I was wondering if someone would like to speak to that point, and you know, how that's been different maybe since the pandemic started.
I think that is such a hard question. I feel like time since since COVID, it's just been like a vortex. Like, I really don't know if it's been a year or 2 years or 3. I think though, now as we kind of slowly start to come out of it, we're becoming a little bit more conscious about maybe slowing things down or just like looking around us. Definitely, you know, since the pandemic, it's been extremely fast paced. I think it's just been a whirlwind for, you know, on many different levels. But I think now it's really about us questioning, you know, is it safe to gather? Are we putting people at risk? You know, we have a huge duty of care for the people who are coming to us to use our services. And while it's really important to be able to kind of bring back these services where we can unite and we can, you know, get to see each other again, there is still a question about, are we putting people at risk? And yeah, so I think it's just kind of, now that the storm is kind of slowly starting to fade away, kind of, we're kind of, there's a lot more questions coming up and a lot more kind of maybe trying to slow down and looking after one another in that time as well.
Mars or Ismael, would you like to respond on that point about time and collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess we didn't appreciate it until we lost it, essentially. Like time is so precious, but as soon as we were trapped inside our homes, we didn't, like, we sort of took it for granted. So I guess, yeah, it's just about like knowing when is it safe to go out again. And you never know if someone has to go self-isolate and then everyone has to go again, and then again, it's really tough. Like some members on the collective, on the Blueprint Collective, I haven't seen for probably 2 years, 2.5 years because of COVID. And yeah, it's just really tough.
Yeah, I think on the point of time and collaboration, Grace Lee Boggs used to always ask, what time is it on the clock of the world? And it's something that, like, over and over again, we're like looking towards and we're asking ourselves with each organizing cycle of the conference. And in many ways, you know, collaborations and thinking about time, it requires us to think about the purpose of those collaborations, right? How do we honor ourselves in that time? While also understanding that, like, pre-COVID, I think all of us were moving at a speed that did not accommodate us being in our bodies, did not accommodate our creativity and our process and our practices. And instead, we were finding ourselves always running, right? We never quite had enough time, right? We didn't have the ability to think about, how am I critically building this connection with this person? Am I nurturing a relationship, or am I looking for a product? And I think that during this moment, thinking about collaboration, thinking about time, it requires us to re-engage with patience, right? It requires us to understand that, like, there's no part of what we're living through that we've lived through before. How do I honor that as I'm waiting for an email response, right? How do I honor that as I think about this big, beautiful thing that I hope to produce, and knowing that we're holding so much. We're holding the grief of what's happened. We're holding the grief of, like, people losing loved ones, of us losing a sense of, you know, normalcy in our lives, of connection. And I think in many ways, it's caused me to be a lot more intentional about what putting time into a collaboration looks like, right? To be more intentional about honoring sort of like the selves that are coming to the table to really build this beautiful thing.
That's beautiful, Mars. Thank you for that. And I think I have to say that, like, Ally Media Conference was something that really that really helped me get, you know, that space that you all created really helped me get through period in the pandemic. And I'm sure that that is something that's felt by a lot of other people who attended, like everybody who attended and everyone who like participated. Yeah, I wanted to like think about another phrase that you brought up, which was around intergenerational, you know, just that sort of notion of intergenerational work, and that importance, I guess, like for all of you, to create these spaces where intergenerational conversations can take place, and yeah, what your thoughts are about, like, I guess, intergenerational learnings or intergenerational solutions as we move forward. Maybe that's a big, massive question, but maybe a good one just to kind of think about a little bit right now.
I love this question because for me, it's bringing up like the AMC's Detroit rootedness. So in an attempt to sort of like frame why I think intergenerational participation and collaboration is so important, I draw a lot of my influence from thinking a lot about how Black people in America how we've always had to organize around our survival and being seen. And, you know, we can go even before the civil rights era. You know, Detroit had a really big rebellion that happened in the 40s, right? And it was around racism, it was around housing, it was around not having job opportunities, it was around so many different things, right? And there was an uprising then. And then 23 years later, we get the rebellion of 1967 in the same city, right? A city where people organized for labor rights, right? A city where people thought a lot about Black liberation. And when you think about times in my context, like before the 60s, the 1960s and the civil rights era, right, that happened, onto the Black Power movement to where we are with Black Lives Matter today, I think the through line of just those historical movements, to me, is what makes intergenerational conversations and organizing so important, right? Because it is definitely leaving the roadmap for what's possible, right? For the next generation of people to come. And there's so many lessons that I have learned from my elders, right? From those who were organizing before me. And I think that is the through line of that space. When we think about the world that we want to build, we have to make sure to build that intergenerational capacity.
Definitely. Nirmean or Ismael, you're unmuting yourself. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think the whole concept of the Blueprint Collective is to leave a blueprint for the next generation. So I guess like for us, like essentially at the beginning of the blueprint, we had like older mentors and leaders leading the group, and they were essentially telling us like how everything is run, how you should look at spaces, and how you should really pass it on to the next generation. And yeah, I think that's the mentality that we've had from day one. That's why we're like, essentially at the beginning, we were called like just the Young Ambassadors. And then it was changed to the Blueprint Collective because we saw an opportunity to sort of leave a sort of trailblaze the path for the future generations. And yeah, that's my piece.
Nirmean, would you like to share something before we go for a break?
Yeah, I mean, I think just almost repeating what these guys have said is, you know, for us, the food bank, for us, is kind of not enough. Just distributing emergency aid really is just putting a plaster on the issue. So, you know, it's very important for us to be able to kind of understand why it is people are in this situation in the first place. And what you'll definitely see and know is that a lot of these issues stem from they're systemic issues mainly, but they stem from, they start from a very young age. And if we don't start talking about why exactly, people in a country like the UK, I mean, in many countries, the States and Canada are still needing to go to a food bank to be able to eat, then, nothing is going to change. So we've really got to try find out and advocate and shout about these issues. I think just one thing to note as well is that we always, see the adults who are going and queuing up in the food bank, and sometimes it's easy to kind of forget about the children who are in these households who are also experiencing these issues.
Oops, I'll unmute myself. There's so many important things that the work of Sufra, as well as lots of other food banks, are doing in terms of that kind of systemic change piece, and contextualizing like access to food and all of these essential needs as part of an anti-oppression approach and anti-oppression perspective. I think it is time for a little break right now. So we're going to take, I'm going to say 10 minutes. Is that right, Lauren?
Yeah,
so if you have a question, then please think about your questions whilst we go on a little break, and put your questions into the chat, and then I'll invite you to either like say your question, or otherwise I could say it on your behalf if you would prefer. So yeah, we're gonna do that. Sounds good to everyone? We're gonna take 10. See you at 8:10 UK time. Cheers. Hope everyone had a good break and some opportunity to stretch your legs and get a drink of water or whatever you're drinking. And I think, yeah, here we've got Bridget, and Bridget's back as well. Great. So yeah, to our audience, if you've got a question, then please either put it in the chat, or you can raise your digital hand if you'd like to ask a question. And yeah, go ahead. I also need to just rearrange my screen so I can make sure I see everyone too. Lauren has a question.
I'll just ask it this way, if that's okay. So I guess I'm just curious about what you guys think about the particular role of arts and culture in kind of creating spaces for us to come together and to address some of the things that you all brought up, in the beginning part of the conversation, particularly maybe about some of the things Nirmean started to talk about, the bigger context that we're all working through. So I guess maybe in the context of thinking about gathering, or more broadly, what's important, what do the arts and culture make possible in this respect, from your experience or in your hopes, either way?
Who would like to take that question?
So I think kind of hearing that question, I was kind of thinking that I kind of can see it as like a medium, just as like food is kind of like a medium to bring people together. And, you know, you can have super skilled cooks, chefs, and you can have people who can really only make pot noodles, but you can still sit down on a table and share a meal together. And I think this is something I'm even myself kind of had in my mind, that to be in arts, you kind of have to have a skill, you know, you kind of have to, or have a talent for it. And I remember when I first spoke with Lauren, we were kind of just discussing that actually there is art in, you know, everything and anything. And I think it's something that, you know, community organizations, but all of us should really bear that in mind as well, and try and just be aware of it, be conscious of it, and try and kind of incorporate it as much as possible in the work that we do. Because yeah, I think it's a great medium to bring people together, to improve, like increase their confidence and kind of see the world maybe in a different light.
Thanks, Nirmean. Ismael, I don't know if you want to like respond, because I was thinking about Seen and Heard and the Blueprint Collective, and I was thinking about how you all used like co-design methods to kind of come together and develop that piece and develop the work that you were doing. And I was wondering if you felt like you are connected, or what's your kind of interpretation, or what's your understanding of the arts from that process, from all that experience of doing that work.
I think spaces have to be able to express themselves without people in it. So like you can't have a space that is just, that looks plain or isn't really inviting. So like when Quintain gave us a space for like to design, I think all of us, we all had different ideas as to what kind of what kind of groups do you want it to be inclusive of? Like what kind of cultural backgrounds do you want it to represent? And I think it's like using art to make places more inclusive. And again, as Nirmean said, like use it as a medium, I think it's quite interesting, because usually nowadays people usually, like besides arts, they use other things such as common interests, such as sports or other things, to sort of bring people together. And I think art, especially maybe in this local area, like art is yet to be explored as a sort of as a medium. Yeah.
Mars, how about you?
Yeah, I love this question. I think it's one that we're really thinking about here as Detroit newly organizes an arts and culture department, which for a city like this feels really confusing to just be getting. And I think that there are ways in which, you know, artists and creatives have always been on the front lines of creating the most innovative solutions that we need, whether that be through policy or through how we need to rethink infrastructure. And I think there are so many different layers to thinking about how arts and culture comes together to maybe better support or better think about how we're like sustaining the work. And I think sustainability is the big question, right? Hidden like in this question as well, because there's, of course, we're thinking about resources, we think about like time and money and, so like building capacity from a small organization perspective, which could all be very, very useful if you're thinking about the sustainability of what arts and culture is supporting, especially on a grassroots level. And I think the other thing is, when we think about that support, how do we shift from being product oriented which puts a lot of the burden on those sort of like arts and culture curators and organizers to have to be thinking about the end result, right? And how do we just get to a point where we're sustaining sort of like that field of grassroots artists and grassroots movement builders and move into a space where, whether it's as a funder or as a nonprofit that helps build the capacity, you're not necessarily just driven to thinking a lot about what are we going to get at the end and how does that sort of like, I don't know, I want to say like make our portfolio more sparkly, right? How do you get towards the more human-centered approach? And I think that COVID is what's really showing us that this is what we need. We need our arts and culture organizations to be thinking about the deeper responsibilities of sustainability.
How's that, Lauren?
I mean, it's amazing. I guess one of the real questions that kind of lies behind this whole series of conversations for us at Metroland is kind of like, what can we learn together across the arts and community organizing, community building, community care about how to make this world better, you know, because I think what Mars is pointing to is the kind of institutionalization of the arts. And what we've seen through the pandemic is that that's just not sustainable, and it doesn't promote the values necessarily that it purports to, because institutions, not always, but often, you know, are attached to systems that are contradictory to liberation. So I think, you know, what Mars is suggesting is something around like, how do we think through the strategies that have been emerging in organizing and in community-based practice? And I guess the three of you here are all kind of experts in that. So it's kind of, you know, how do you kind of keep people connected, keep people well, keep people, alive? Like, that's the basic work. And I guess in the arts, we kind of take a lot for granted and need to be a bit more humble, I think, sometimes. So I guess, you know, it's maybe useful to hear from all of you, like some of the strategies that you think we need to learn from your experiences. And when I say we, I mean like the arts more broadly, like maybe the arts institutional kind of complex, as it were.
The thing that immediately came up for me as a strategy is creating space, right? I'm not sure if this is the case where you all are, but I know here, it is very difficult for marginalized communities to have a space or a seat at the table, or, you know, however you want to frame it, in arts and culture from an institutional perspective. So I think the strategy really needs to be about, or a strategy is, how are we creating a pipeline for people who are those grassroots artists and grassroots organizers that we are excited to work with, that we are excited to fund, and how do we create space for them to, if they so choose, be in arts and culture institutions, right? What becomes possible when the very people that you're excited to support actually play a more active role, which then always leads me to thinking about the participatory design nature of the conference and how at every level we're engaging our community through building advisory boards, right? Through thinking about the coordinators that we're bringing together. And it makes me think of, how can a participatory design also lead you to the strategies that your community and also the institution are most excited for?
Mm-hmm. You're getting some love there, Mars. Definitely. And I think that you know, what you're noticing and bringing up is really present, I feel. And I feel like I just wanted to mention that I feel really honored to be on this panel and chairing this conversation, which is centering around like global ethnic majorities, because it doesn't happen often enough, that, you know, the experiences of people from global ethnic majority communities are really centered and really prioritized. And so, yeah, I hope, you know, that this can be part of the way forward, and part of the conversations. And I guess, like, you know, with, for example, like AMC, then you've all been working on like disability justice and racial justice for a long time, and thinking about these different approaches to connecting social justice. And I was just wondering about, like, going back to something that Mars mentioned, around, or like, that was something that was in the ether that we were talking about, which was around campaigning, and like your thoughts, maybe Ismael and Nirmean, about that campaigning work and how that has become important to your spaces, or how that has become possible, because sometimes I feel like that is not necessarily a space that many people are encouraged to take up.
Yeah, I think that's a really tricky one, because I think from our perspective, our kind of the advocacy work that we try to do essentially is to make ourselves extinct, is to kind of like shut ourselves down, because is recognizing that we shouldn't be here in the first place, and that is the issue. And I think that it's a heavy bullet to eat. You know, it's very difficult to get all of these kind of layers of feelings, experiences, but also fact, in a way that, you know, a lot of people want to understand and feel motivated by. And I think with us as well, it's kind of like to be touching, to discuss food poverty is, it's not just about food, it's all of the levels of poverty. And I think what really has worked for us in the past is trying to demonstrate it in a creative way on a very small scale. But, you know, we've, you know, tried initiatives where we've kind of collaborated with another food bank who actually created a play about what it's like to be in a food bank, and just to see like the amount of people who would show up for an event like that, rather than maybe kind of read a newsletter where we've got all of these facts and stats and petitions. It's a kind of a great way, I think, to get people engaged and want to be part of the conversation and take action.
So really utilizing those different creative methods that we're kind of talking about, and leaning into the different media, using food, using plays, using poetry, all of those things. Ismael, I wonder whether you have some thoughts as well. Like, tell us about like sport as well, the role of sport and the poetry that you weave with the football.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah, I'm a coach. I do the 13, 14-year-olds, and I guess in terms of like, I see football as an art, essentially, like the way the game is played, the way people run around, like off the ball, on the ball. I think it's a way for young people to sort of express themselves, and especially with spaces at such a premium, especially for marginalized constituencies, such as like the Stonebridge area or other local areas. I think kids like sort of want to come out and show people what they've got, essentially. And they use, again, we use football as a medium to sort of get these guys in. And then we talk about things such as like, what kind of other spaces do you want? Because like, again, I speak to like some of these foundations in the area, like, and sort of like relay to them like what what the kids want. So essentially, like what happened with Seen and Heard, and like how we told like Quintain how we wanted it, is I sort of took that blueprint and yeah, I'm trying to use it around in the local area and sort of get kids to express themselves through like using art, but through different like mediums, such as like football, maybe even basketball. But yeah, I guess it's quite tough, but we're getting through it.
You certainly are. Yeah. I'm just noticing the time, and I was thinking about some final offerings or like thoughts from you all before I hand over back to Lauren. So I was wondering about your current inspirations. What's inspiring you at the moment? What are the things, maybe it's something that you're looking at, reading, experiencing, something new that you've bought that you're like holding dear to you, whatever that is. Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, something that I bought like not quite recently, but a couple months back was sort of like it was these new pair of football boots, and I sort of enjoy. I myself play football, and I sort of enjoy and take inspiration from like local figures. Like for example, like I know Raheem Sterling was brought up in like in Monks Park and like the local area. So currently that's where I'm at. I'm just trying to play football and sort of express myself through that and gather around with friends and yeah, just improve my mental health essentially. That's where I'm at right now.
That's great. The football boot as a medium, as an important tool for that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Ishmael. Mars or Nirmean, what are you treasuring right now?
Do you know what? I'm really sorry to, like, I'm going to end this on a bit of a morbid kind of note, but, I think a lot of us have experienced loss, over the last year, even just recently, or have not been feeling well and have been able to recover from that. And I think the ability to recover is what I think I'm finding has given like a fresher perspective on where we're at, and just to be very grateful for what we have, and the ability to actually have health and be able to step outside and see people is something that I'm really not taking for granted at the moment. And just with every interaction I'm feeling quite inspired, because just feel grateful for the ability to do that.
Thank you, Nirmean. That's so important. So thank you for bringing that up and just reminding us where we're at in terms of COVID and this long process, this long period of like transitioning, always transitioning.
Yeah, I love this question a lot. And I'm holding like two things. And one is a book called The Book of Delights by Ross Gay. He's a poet and writer that lives in Bloomington, Indiana. And he like wrote about one delight that he experienced every day. And I think it's causing me to shift my perspective in how I see what's around me, even during like long moments of just having to be in my apartment because of the state of the world. And then the second thing is that I picked up practicing film photography this year. So going out with my Minolta camera and trying out new lenses and buying way too much film is what I've been really inspired by and delighted by these days.
Thank you. That's great. I'm going to look into this book of Delights by Ross Gay. Yeah. So I'm being inspired by lots of books, but one book that I wanted to mention is Beyond Survival. Yeah, which is a new anthology. It's called Strategies and Stories from the Transformative Justice Movement. And it's a great collection. It's an amazing collection of lots and lots of, yeah, very practical things as well as very thoughtful things from some amazing community organizers. So yeah, that's been kind of like really inspiring to me to just see this all collected and being able to kind of like go back to these things. So I wanted to say thank you to our speakers for like so many inspirations, bringing up this idea of like, yeah, the things that we need, like virtual notice boards, from thinking about the relationship between poverty and anti-oppression work in general and system change work in general, as well as Ismael's thoughts about future generations and the importance of that and making space for that, as well as thinking about sustainability and celebration and joy, the importance of joy. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much to Ismael and Nirmean and Mars for this wonderful conversation today, for joining us. I also wanted to thank Rebecca and Bridget, our BSL interpreters, and to the Metroland Cultures team for inviting us all. And also, of course, to the audience. And I'll hand back to Lauren now.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to have been with you all. Thank you to all of the panelists and both of our wonderful interpreters. It's a real privilege to have shared space with you and everybody else who's joined us today. I just wanted to mention this is the tip of the iceberg, as it were. So this is the very beginning of our program that's going to be running from now until December. The launch of Metroland Cultures as an independent organization. Making Myself Visible is the name of the program. And we have two very exciting things coming up next week. So we'll be launching our new exhibition, Rashid Areen Provisional Notes. And that's going to be here at Metroland Studio. There's a sort of celebration event for that on Friday, the 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. And then we have an open house event on Saturday, the 25th of September from 12 to 5 with all sorts of fantastic stuff by local artists, food, music. It's going to be just a really fantastic celebratory day for families and everyone. So we hope that those of you who are in geographical proximity to us will join us. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll be in touch with those of you who came to us through Eventbrite to hear about what you thought. So just look out for an email from us. But thank you so much for sticking with it, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.